Okay, good Tavach. I'm going to share with you tonight a few stories of the Mittler Rebbe, as this week is the anniversary of the birth and the passing of the Mittler Rebbe on the 9th of Kislev. And this week is also the anniversary of the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe on the 10th of Kislev. So I'm going to share with you a few stories about the birth of the Mittler Rebbe and his early childhood. Really fascinating. The Mittler Rebbe, his father and mother were blessed with daughters, but they were not blessed with any sons. They had the Alter Rebbe had a daughter named Freda, a daughter Devorah Leah, a daughter Rachel, and he had asked his teacher, the Mitzvah Maggid, several times for a blessing for sons, and the Mitzvah Maggid didn't really give him a clear blessing. He just said to him that having a daughter first, the Talmud says, is a good sign that you'll have sons as well. Gemara says, Bas Tchila, having a daughter first, is Siman Yaf, is a good sign for the sons that will follow. Another time, the Alter Rebbe asked his teacher, Mitzvah Maggid, for a blessing for children, for sons. And the Mitzvah Maggid said, well, your daughter Freda, she's like a son, meaning that her knowledge in Chassidus and Torah was parallel to the sons of the Alter Rebbe they later had. But a few months before the Mitzvah Maggid's passing, he told the Alter Rebbe what a person should do on the day of the bris of their son, what a person should do on the night before the Vachnach, the night before bris. And the Alter Rebbe, of course, was very encouraged. It must be the reason he's telling me all these things is because I'm going to be blessed with a child. And the Mitzvah Maggid told the Alter Rebbe, he said to him, I'm going to tell you something, but don't ask me where I heard this from and when I heard this and how I heard this. But he said to him, how do you merit to have a child as arche by having guests? It's known that the Baal Shem Tov, what brought him into the world was the merit of his parents taking care of their guests. And so the similar thing, the Mitzvah Maggid told the Alter Rebbe that how you merit to have a boy is arche through having guests. That's what Mitzvah Maggid told the Alter Rebbe a few months before he passed away. 3 days before he passed away, the Mitzvah Maggid passed away in the same day that the Alter Rebbe would later be redeemed on the 19th of Kislev. The Alter Rebbe was released from prison on the 19th of Kislev, and before the Maggid passed away, he actually told the Alter Rebbe, the 19th of Kislev is our day of redemption. But 3 days before he passed away, that's when he told the Alter Rebbe about how to celebrate a bris, how to celebrate the night before bris. And then he asked the Alter Rebbe, why don't you ask me about how you're supposed to celebrate the Friday night before a bris? Why don't you ask me about this? So Alter Rebbe responded that he feels that the teachings that the Mitzvah Maggid is giving to him are being given from such a place in heaven that it's impossible for a human being to summon, to affect, to arouse that kind of divine response. In other words, there is in Kabbalah discussion about what a human being can do to channel, to draw down a divine response. A person in the Zohar says, an arousal from below causes an arousal from on high. But there's only so far a person can reach. And there's some things that Hashem gives a person that can't be drawn down from our own efforts. So Alter Rebbe said, I feel that the teaching that you're giving to me is from Atika. It's like dew dripping from a place, from a level of godliness called Atik, that it's not possible that my request for it could possibly make trigger something or add something. And the Mizitcha Maggid said that you're 100% correct. This is Emes Amiti, it's true. And he told Alter Rebbe that a few days before, in general, someone who is a servant of Hashem merits to have divine inspiration to see the future. And he said, especially in the 3 days before someone passes away, someone who's a servant of Hashem, in the 3 days before they pass away, they're given a unique divine inspiration. And then he said them a teaching on the Haftorah of Chazon Ovadia. Chazon Ovadia means Ovadia, a vision of Ovadia. But Mizitcha Maggid told the Alter Rebbe, Ovadia means a servant of Hashem. Chazon Ovadia means a servant of Hashem can see. There are things that a servant of Hashem can see. And he told the Alter Rebbe, I could see that you will be blessed with a child. And when you are blessed with a child, you should mention at that occasion when he's born what I'm telling you now. And you should also give him a name. You should name him after me. That's what the Maggid told the Alter Rebbe on the eve of the 18th of Kislev. He passed away 2 days later on the 19th of Kislev. And sure enough, a year later, a little less than a year later, on the 9th of Kislev, the following year, after the Maggid passed away, that's when the Mittler Rebbe was born. There was a cloth that the Rebbes had, and that they passed one generation to the next, that it was said that this cloth came from the Baal Shem Tov, and when the baby was born, they would wrap the child in this special cloth, and that's also the cloth that the Mittler Rebbe was wrapped in when he was born. The year after the Maggid passed away, the Alter Rebbe was in the presence of the Chavrai Kadisha, of his colleagues, fellow students in Mizitcha Maggid, including his teacher, Rebbe Mendel of Haradak, and he was discussing with him what had happened the year before. And Rebbe Mendel of Haradak said that in the Shabbos before the passing of the Mizitcha Maggid, the Shabbos before, which was Parshas Vayishlach, did you notice, he told the Alter Rebbe, did you notice that the Mizitcha Maggid was alluding to the fact that you would have a child? So Alter Rebbe said, I asked for it, he said it in the language of a prayer. He said, I asked for a child then, and now I am asking that my child live longer than Shmuel Hanavi. It says that the prophet Shmuel Hanavi was born through the request of his parents, through the request of his mother Chana, but he only lived for 52 years. So Alter Rebbe said, I'm asking that my son live longer than the prophet Shmuel, who was born also through a special prayer and request. That's what I'm asking for now. Last year I asked to have a child, but now I'm asking to live longer. And indeed, the prophet Shmuel lived for 52 years, and the Mittler Rebbe lived for 54 years. When the Mittler Rebbe grew a little older, and at his Abshanish, he turned 3 years old, the Alter Rebbe began his formal education. And he summoned one of his Hasidim, whose name was Rebbe Sol Dov. Sol Dov was a school teacher. And he said to Rebbe Sol Dov that you have a mitzvah of supporting your family. I have a mitzvah of teaching my son. Let's switch mitzvahs. Alter would always speak with a song. I'll support your family, and you teach my son. This Rebbe Sol Dov was apparently a brilliant man. And so he said to the Alter Rebbe, he realized that he could ask for something more than just being supported. He said, in order to teach your son, I have to know how to teach him. How do I teach? The Alter Rebbe responded again, and the Alter Rebbe, whenever he spoke, he sang. The Alter Rebbe said, learning begins with Aleph base. What is an Aleph? What's an Aleph? The Alter Rebbe said, a Yud for an Aleph. The form of an Aleph is there's a Yud on the top. A Yud for Nuntin, a Kapas, Bemsa, Dos is an Aleph. An Aleph has a Yud on top, a Yud on bottom, and a line in the middle. This is an Aleph. And the Alter Rebbe explained that the Yud on the top is Hashem, because whatever we know about godliness is only a tiny bit, and the yud in the bottom represents a Jew, because a Jew's approach to Hashem is with humility, like a small yud. And what connects a Jew and Hashem is the faith we have in Hashem. Another version is that the author was saying that the yud on top is Torah, the yud on the bottom is the Jew. And again, it's our faith that connects us with Torah. Another explanation is the yud on the top is the soul, yud on the bottom is the body. And it's our reverence for Hashem that bonds together soul and body. That's what the Alter Rebbe said then. And whenever the Rebbe would repeat the story, the Rebbe would cry. Vos is an Aleph, and Aleph is a Yud von Eben, and Yud von unten, Dos is an Aleph. And they repeated the sing song of the Alter Rebbe. So the Mittler Rebbe had a very unique gift, even as a very small child. When he was 5 years old, he celebrated a siyum on the whole Tanakh. He celebrated concluding the entire Tanakh, all of the books of the Torah and the prophets and the writings by heart at the age of 5 years old. His teacher, Rabbi Sol Doiv, became very popular because since the Alter Rebbe chose him as a teacher for his sons, all other Chassidim wanted him to teach their son, their children as well. And so the Alter Rebbe, so this teacher, Rabbi Sol Doiv, he had so many students, he had to divide them in 2 different classes. He had one class he would teach how to read. In the other class, he would teach more advanced things like Talmud. And he noticed once that this young 3-year-old boy, the Mittler Rebbe, is paying attention to the other class. And so he reprimanded him. He said, "Do you know what I taught you already? Let me ask you some questions. What I taught you in your group." And he realized that the Mittler Rebbe not only did he know whatever he taught the younger group, he also knew whatever he taught the older group. And it's just an example of the incredible gifts Mittler Rebbe had at this very young age. The Mittler Rebbe was once davening as a child, and he was reached the verse we say in the beginning of davening before Baruch Shamar, Shivati lecha atir pe'eni. I cried out to you, Hashem, and you healed me. And you could see he was very emotional and distraught saying those words. I cried out to you and you healed me. So he wasn't the old man. He wasn't unwell. What was he crying about? So he explained, atir pe'eni doesn't just mean you healed me. Means you've weakened me. You weakened my animal soul. Shivati lech, I called out to you, Hashem, atir pe'eni, so you should weaken my animal soul. The Mittler Rebbe would also spend time with the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe in their farbrengens and their gatherings. And the Chassidim, at the youngest age, they would look at the Mittler Rebbe, 5, 6 years old, and hear what he had to say. And although many things they learned because he repeated things that he saw by his father, but many of his own insights were things that Hasidim repeat till this very day from the very youngest of ages. On one occasion, the Mittler Rebbe came home from school and he saw a few Hasidim outside the Alter Rebbe's room, his friends, older Hasidim, Rav Shmuel Munkes, Rabbi Yosef Kolbei, Rav Shemer Rafals, and he saw that Rav Shmuel Munkes asking the 2 other Hasidim, Rabbi Yosef Kolbei and Rav Shemer Rafals, why do you guys look so sad? And they responded, because times are tough and business is slow. So Mittler Rebbe interjected. He said to Rav Shmuel, why are you asking them why they're sad? We know why people become sad because of a verse of Tehillim. It says in Tehillim, the literal translation of the verse is, their idols are made of silver and gold, the work of the hands of man. They have a mouth that cannot speak, they have eyes that cannot see, they have ears that cannot hear, they have a nose that cannot smell. So Mittler Rebbe said that this verse also could be read to mean this. The word their idols could also be read to mean their sadness. Why does a person become sad? Because he feels that silver and gold is the work of the hands of man. He feels that his financial success or failure has to do with his own efforts, and because he feels his efforts will make it or break it for him, that's what makes him sad. And because of this erroneous approach to life, even though he has eyes, even though he sees divine providence, doesn't resonate, doesn't know what he's seeing. Even though he has a mouth and he's saying words of Torah, words of Chassidus, it's not actually, he doesn't realize the divine providence, doesn't realize what's really going on, doesn't realize what he's really learning. Until the Mittler Rebbe says he has a nose and cannot smell, he cannot experience and appreciate the godliness, the godliness in the world around him. This is until he becomes an idol himself. That's what Mittler Rebbe said. That makes him person into an idol himself, because he doesn't realize that silver and gold is a work of is not the work of the hands of man. Silver and gold is only birchas Hashem tasher. It's a blessing of Hashem that brings wealth. Michal David said that this is actually brought in the teaching to Ben Ish Chai as well. That Atzabeim doesn't just mean idols; it also means sadness. The Mittler Rebbe, when he was a child, for whatever reason, he was given a punishment, and the punishment was that he would not be allowed to hear Chassidus in the Alter Rebbe. But he became so distraught that he became physically ill. Alter Rebbe said the next time he says a mimer, next time he shares Chassidus, the Mittler Rebbe won't be able to come in. Mittler was bedridden; he was sick, and the doctors examining him said that we never saw anything like this. It's something that's very unusual. We don't know what's causing this, but it's dangerous. And the Alter Rebbe's wife, Stern Star, was very concerned. The Alter Rebbe said, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." And the Alter Rebbe said Chassidus for him. He shared a discourse of Chassidus for him, and he immediately recuperated to the extent that he was able to walk out of the bed himself healthy after hearing this Chassidus from the Alter Rebbe at the age of at a very tender age, right before his bar mitzvah. He was a young child. At the age of 6 years old. He was 6 years old then. The Alter Rebbe would say certain discourses only for his oldest daughter, Freda. And the Mittler Rebbe really wanted to hear these discourses. And he prevailed upon his sister to let him hide under her bed when the Alter was saying a discourse to his older sister. And so the Alter Rebbe in this discourse explained the 8 garments, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. And he explained each of the garments, but he didn't explain the meaning of the gartel, of the belt of the Kohen Gadol. And so the Mittler Rebbe wanted his sister to ask the Alter Rebbe, but he couldn't come out of his hiding place, so he just stuck out from under the bed his gartel. And his sister told the Alter Rebbe, "What about the belt of the Kohen Gadol?" And the Alter Rebbe immediately realized that this question wasn't coming from Freda, it was coming from Mittler Rebbe, and he told the Mittler Rebbe to come out of his hiding place. The Mittler Rebbe's teacher, when he was 11 years old, Mittler Rebbe had another teacher, and the way it worked was with this teacher was that the teacher would go home for the holidays, as it was customary in those days that a school teacher wouldn't go home necessarily every day or every week. He would travel to whoever it was could hire him to teach, and he'd go home for the holidays. He would stay for 5-6 months away from his home. So the Elul, in the month of before Rosh Hashanah, in the year before the Mittler Rebbe's bar mitzvah, the Alter Rebbe summoned the school teacher, and he said to him that he really appreciates all that he has done for his son, the Mittler Rebbe, for all the years that he was teaching him, and he sees how his son is excelling in his learning, and he paid him. The teacher received the money, and the Alter Rebbe didn't tell him, though. He usually would tell him that he's hired for the next period of learning. But on this occasion, he didn't mention it, so the teacher thought it was an oversight. Usually the Alter Rebbe would mention it. This was an oversight. So after the holiday season, he came back. But when he met the Mittler Rebbe after the holiday season, and he started to study with him, he could see the Mittler Rebbe was head and shoulders above his teacher in learning. And he was shocked because he had just been there a few months before, and now the Mittler Rebbe was on a whole different level. And he asked the Mittler Rebbe, "How did you achieve so much so quickly?" So he told his teacher that on Simchas Torah, my father told me that because I'm approaching bar mitzvah, I should make kiddush myself. And the author blessed him that his mental capacities should grow immeasurably, because that's what happened. So the teacher realized that, number one, that the Alter Rebbe didn't want him to feel bad, and the Alter Rebbe and he discovered himself why he couldn't teach him. But the Alter Rebbe didn't forget anything. He deliberately didn't mention that he wanted to hire him for the future. And the Alter didn't just thank him for that time period. He remembered now that the Alter Rebbe had thanked him for his years of teaching. It was clear in the words of the Alter Rebbe that this was the end of his tenure as teacher of the Mittler Rebbe, and he became to realize this himself. Instead of being fired, he came to realize this himself. Meeting the Mittler Rebbe, and realizing that he had grown immeasurably since the last time he had seen him just months before. The Mittler Rebbe, again at the youngest of ages, he would talk to other Hasidim, and he would share with them great insights that we discussed today. Mittler was a one Farbrengen, and the Hasidim were discussing a Mishnah, the sixth Mishnah in Tractate Kedushin. They were discussing the spiritual implications of this Mishnah. The Mishnah says that we'll do questions soon when I finish. The Mishnah says that the way something the Mishnah is discussing the laws of ownership and how things are transferred, various methods of transfer of ownership. So one of the methods of transfer of ownership is before I continue, I wanted to say something else. After the Alter Rebbe said a discourse of Chassidus, and the Mittler Rebbe recovered, so the Alter Rebbe said to him, "Does it matter to you so much to hear Chassidus?" And the Mittler Rebbe, at 6 years old, he said, "Tate, without Chassidus, what point is there in living?" That's what he said at 6 years old. At what point is there in living without Chassidus? Okay, before I share the next story, someone had a question. Let me just take off the mute. Okay. Anyone have a question?
Rabbi, I have one question. Is it Rabbi Dovber is the same person of Magid Bemezrich, or there is a different person?
So Mezritcher Magid asked that his student, the Alter Rebbe, name his son after him, so that they had the same name. The Mittler Rebbe, the Rebbe Dovber, was named after Mezritcher Magid, the Alter Rebbe's teacher.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last story I wanted to share was that they were having a Farbrengen, and they're discussing the laws of acquisition and the spiritual counterpart to these laws. The Mittler Rebbe was listening to them, and this is what the Hasidim were saying. The Hasidim were talking about how, in order to transfer ownership to a to gift something to the Beis Hamikdash, to the temple, it can be gifted through money. The Gizbar, the man who is managing the accounts of the temple, can buy something for the temple with money, and then it is transferred to the ownership of the temple. However, in order for a regular person to acquire something, an act of acquisition, is not sufficient just to give money. He has to make a chazaka. He has to actually do something. So the Chassidim were discussing the spiritual applications of this, and they were saying, how do you reach Gavaya? How do you get higher? What makes you higher? And the Chassidim said, kesef, money. Money, spiritually, the Hebrew word for money in Hebrew, kesef, as we had in today's Torah portion. Lavan told Yaakov, why did you leave? You yearn to go to your father's home. So the word nichsef, nichsafta, you yearned, has the same root as the word for money. So the Hasidim said that to go higher in your service of Hashem, you have to really have a love for Hashem, and that love and yearning to be close to Hashem, that's what lifts you up. And the other half of that Mishnah, they interpreted it to other half of that phrase in the Mishnah, that hedyot refers to mundane things, and extricate yourself from mundane things, it's not sufficient to just yearn to go to a higher level, but there has to be a chazaka to do something in order to be able to pull yourself out of mundane things, out of things which are trivial. So Mittler was deep in thought, and the Hasidim asked Mittler Rebbe, "What are you? What do you think about this?" So Mittler Rebbe said, "You're not explaining the second part of the Mishnah." And he said, "What does the second part of the Mishnah say?" The second part of the Mishnah says that if someone makes a declaration and they say this particular item should be given to Hashem. So the Talmud says in this Mishnah, a declaration, a promise to give something to Hashem, to the temple, is equal to actually giving it to someone else, to a human being. In other words, when you make an acquisition with another human being, you have to actually there has to be some kind of transfer of the object. But to gift something to the temple, it's sufficient merely to say it. Merely just say this should belong to the temple, it works. If you say this should belong to someone else, this should belong to Yankel, it doesn't get transferred. You have to actually give it to Yankel for there to be a king, if there to be an active acquisition. So the Mittler Rebbe said, as a child, he said, "Halavai, we should have. I wish we should have that our amiras l'gavaya, that our promises or our prayers, our Torah study, our words we say towards Hashem, I wish they would be as devoted as we are to our physical things. That's how that's what we have to strive for. We have to strive for that our amiras l'gavaya, that what we do for Hashem, our davening, our learning, it should be with the same kind of passion, the same kind of excitement as we have for mundane material things. Amiras l'gavaya k'miras l'hadiyat. Our saying towards Hashem should be similar to our devotion and our excitement and our passion for the physical. That's what the Mittler Rebbe said, which a teaching which really completely changed the perspective of all the Chassidim at this Farbrengen and for all generations. A very powerful teaching. And the Mittler Rebbe himself, his son-in-law, the Tzemach Tzedek, said that if you would prick him with a needle, blood would not come out, Chassidus would come out. Because the Mittler Rebbe, his life was all about Chassidus. And that's why we find this unusual thing about the Mittler Rebbe, that he was born and he passed away in the same day, highlighting that his body and soul were one. And the message for us to learn from Mittler Rebbe, as Rebbe taught, is that we shouldn't think that we're not able to have Hasidic warmth when we're engaged in the mundane. The Mittler Rebbe was saying that when we're engaged in holy things, we should have the same kind of passion as when we're engaged in material things. But the Rebbe took us a step further, and he said, even our engagement in the material, we could still, as we're engaged in the material, we could still feel the same Hasidic warmth that we have when we're praying and learning. We could have that same exact warmth, even when we're engaged in material. There's still that, because as Mittler Rebbe taught, that the soul and the body are one, and that's how his life was lived. So he empowered us to have geula, to redeem and reveal godliness, even when we're engaged in the physical, to have the same Yiddish, same Hasidic warmth, even as engaged in the most mundane and most physical things. This is really what Mashiach is about. Mashiach is about the revelation of godliness in the physical world. As the Mittler Rebbe taught, Mittler Rebbe said, the way Chassidim say the story is that someone asked the Mittler Rebbe, if Mittler Rebbe asked one of his Chassidim, do you think I have proficiency in the exoteric part of the Torah, or only in the esoteric parts of Torah? And the Chassid responded, he said that the word in the street is that you're far more proficient in the deeper parts of Torah. And the Mittler Rebbe said something to this effect, that if you would spend a little more time studying the exoteric parts of Torah, he would be far. He had the same chush, the same talent for the revealed parts of Torah. But he said, I want that when two Hasidim meet, they should discuss Yichudi Ilah. When two Hasidim meet in the street, they should discuss the higher level of the unity, the higher level of understanding of the oneness of Hashem. That's what they should do when they meet in the street, that's what Mashiach is about. That there's a relation in the physical world of Yichudi Ilah, of the truth of Hashem, about Einam Avad, nothing besides Hashem. And L'chaim, we should see is Galus Malcham Mashiach Karav Mamish. L'chaim, good Tvorach, Hafeil Tvorach. Good Vach, Abba, good Vach, Chayesara, good Vach, David, good Vach, Yosef, good Chol David. Any questions, comments?